Sometime in 2002 or 2003, shortly after I had bought my very own PlayStation 1, used of course, there was an abundance of PS1 games in game stores, and because PS2 was already out, the PS1 games tended to be quite cheap for the most part. One of the first games I bought then was a minigame compilation with a twist, Incredible Crisis. And back then it felt like a real bargain. The twist is that the game has a plotline, which is maneuvered through by completing a bunch of minigame challenges, and you play the game as different characters. That means that Incredible Crisis is strictly a single-player experience, and to be honest, precisely because of this arrangement, I haven't really bothered playing Incredible Crisis since having completed it the first time, until
Welcome
now.
To Incredible Crisis.
But it is a reasonably fun little game to play through. What I didn't notice after my first playthrough is that the minigames are opened up as you make progress, so you can access them freely outside of the campaign mode, as it were. What lately reignited my interest in this game was actually the soundtrack, which was composed by one of my favorite Japanese bands that I found out about 10 years ago, Tokyo Ska Paradise Orchestra. So that alone made it worth playing the entire game through from start to finish to get the material for this episode. I would definitely recommend any classic PlayStation fan to check this game out because it is a well-crafted game in all areas, but with all the progress made on the genre with games like WarioWare, etc., don't expect too much from Incredible Crisis. Apart from a few select exceptions, movie-based games have always felt like a quick cash grab for the game publishers with too often a badly constructed game to displease the gamers. One movie-based game to actually deliver the goods was Hard Trilogy, which came out about a year after the third movie and 10 years before we even heard there was a fourth movie for the series in the works. The great thing about basically having 3 games in one for each of the 3 movies obviously, is that you get to play through some of the most iconic action sequences in each movie, yet none of the 3 games are exactly the same. The way the first Die Hard has been handled here is, they made it into a behind-viewed third-person action game with styles drawn from Tomb Raider and maybe Loaded. The idea is to shoot all the bad guys in Nakatomi Plaza, then plant a bomb and make your escape. Die Hard 2 has been turned into a rail shooter at the Dulles Airport, and Die Hard with a Vengeance focuses on driving a taxi recklessly around New York City, defusing bombs from cars by bumping into them. Although Die Hard Trilogy certainly takes the most iconic parts from all 3 movies and throws in a couple of yippee-ki-yay voice samples in the mix, it's not exactly a game with longevity unless you're a Die Hard fan of Die Hard. I remember when this game started getting hyped, a lot of people seemed to be very enthusiastic about finally having a game that would do justice to all 3 movies. Well, it certainly proved to be a good bit of fun, but looking at it now, it's very much a game of its time. As it is though, it's a good nostalgia trip game, but I wouldn't consider it anywhere near the best that the first PlayStation has to offer. The way I experienced it happening, the original PlayStation formed its initial popularity through 2 types of games: fighting games such as Battle Arena Toshinden and Tekken, and racing games like Gran Turismo and Colin McRae Rally. I was considering using the first Colin McRae Rally game here, but I seem to recall having played Colin McRae 2.0 a little bit more, so I'll include bits of both here. By the mid-90s, Codemasters was gradually losing their momentum and general idea of what to do with their company, since they were doing 5 to 6 games a year, most of which were sports and racing games. When the first Colin McRae Rally became a big hit for the PlayStation, Codemasters gradually got back on their legs again, and the year 2000 became their best producing year since 1994. There were a few very good reasons why Colin McRae Rally was such a huge deal when it came out, although the two main reasons were the excellent hot seat 2-player mode and the rally physics modeling. It didn't hurt either that the game was very nice to look at in 1998, but 2 years later, Colin 2.0 upgraded pretty much everything to be upgraded from the first game, and for us Finnish fans, they even included a Finnish track in the mix, making it an instant favorite among every virtual racer in my circle of friends. The final official Colin McRae Rally game was released in 2005, but after McRae passed away in 2007, his name was used as a tribute for the special edition of the second Dirt game, which was developed as the successor series. The original Colin McRae Rally was also remade for mobile devices in 2013, but the two PS1 games are the ones us old gamers like to reminisce about and have a blast once every few years or so. The game that brought my attention to the new format of extreme sports games, as they were in the turn of the millennium, was Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, which was released by Acclaim in 2000 for Sega Dreamcast, Windows PCs and Sony Playstation. I remember playing a single-level demo of the game countless times, and it really was the proverbial gateway drug for my addiction to extreme sports games for a while. It took me a long time to find the game for my collection, and even then I couldn't find the original release, but the Maximum Remix version from 2001 instead, only having found it less than 10 years ago, by which time the game had already suffered from aging quite badly. But the nostalgia factor is high, mostly thanks to the awesome soundtrack and the map included in the playable demo. Thankfully, it doesn't differ all that much from the Tony Hawk games, so the gameplay is practically the same. Only most of the levels are a bit unmemorable, which is why I haven't played the game all that much, so it's good to have a save file on a memory card to get to play the good levels whenever I feel like it. As has been mentioned elsewhere, Maximum Remix adds a bunch of new maps, but all the contents from the original Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX have been kept in. The original game really contains all the important stuff in it, but only if you feel like it wasn't quite enough for you the first time around. You might want to check out Maximum Remix. But there are far better extreme sports games for the PS1 around, so unless your nostalgia for this game is at least as high as mine, I cannot really recommend it. Last but definitely not least, the most recent addition to my PS1 game collection has been a long-time favorite of mine, Tobal No.1, developed by Squaresoft and published by Sony in 1996. My longtime friend and gaming accomplice SJ introduced this game to me sometime before the turn of the millennium, and although I wasn't that big a fan of fighting games in general, Tobal No.1 took my interest quickly with its RPG elements and a more tactical approach to fighting than usual. Even though Tobal No.1 is definitely more of an adventure game, it still features character selection in the style of most contemporary arena fighting games, and each of the characters have their own specific special moves, so obviously there is also an arena mode in the game. The real challenge, however, comes in getting used to all the non-fighting controls for which you need to familiarize the entire gamepad's multiple functions. The general graphical design and the RPG elements of Tobal make it very reminiscent of early dungeon-crawling RPG classics, although the characters are designed very effectively by the famous Akira Toriyama, so the game looks like a mixed bag of simplistic 80s design with 90s anime characters in 3D. All in all, it's a unique combination of elements only replicated by the game's only sequel, Tobal No.2. Both games are only available on the first PlayStation, and they are both good reasons to consider buying yourself a PS1 if you don't own one yet.